I would like to welcome everyone to our intercultural communication presentation. In this slide, you can take a glance of our table of content of today's presentation. The case for today's assignment implies Vietnam and America. The conflict between the two countries arose due to a long-term contract signed between America and Vietnam. The business contract had a duration of 10 years with the aim of trading corn in Vietnam at the market price, which will be less than $5 per ton. By agreeing on this, the Americans will get the security of a long-term contract where the Vietnamese will get the necessary suppliers at an affordable price. After a few weeks, the price of corn on world market crashed by $10 per ton, and as a consequence, Vietnam ended up to pay more than anyone else for the corn and any other product made out of it. As circumstances of the contract have been changed, Vietnam suggests that the contract should be negotiated in order to reach a fair one. As a response, America had pointed out the fact that the contract had been signed for the duration of 10 years and therefore it should be respected. Problem description. Due to differences in culture of both countries, finding a solution of the conflict might be a big issue. In the following presentation, we will offer you one of the possible solutions that can solve this problem according to Trompenaar's cultural dimensions. Paying attention especially on the first cultural dimension of Trompenaar, universalism versus particularism. We will move on by explaining the universalism and particularism cultural dimensions of Trompenaars. Universalism. Universalist cultures place a high importance on laws, rules, values, and obligations. They try to deal fairly with people based on these rules, but rules come before relationships. In universalist cultures, ideas can be applied anywhere, and there is always a definition that can be used to determine the distinction between right and wrong. Regarding business matters, in universalist culture, it is generally accepted that in similar situations, people from different origins receive the same salary. Tips for working in universalist cultures. Keep your promises. Be consistent. Explain the logic behind why you have made a certain decision. Particularism. Cultures belonging of this dimension believe that each circumstance and each relationship dictates the rule that they live by. Their response to a situation might change based on what's happening in the moment and who is involved. In a particular culture, members believe that it's the circumstances that determine how ideas can be applied in practice. Personal relationships and obligations play an important role when making ethical decisions. In terms of business matters, status is important and is, as a result, which, for example, salary is linked to the reputation and origin. Tips for working with particularist cultures. Invest in building relationships so you can understand the particular needs of others. Respect these needs as much as possible in your decision making. Call out specific important rules that must be followed. Universalism versus particularism. Why did we decide to use this value in order to solve the conflict between America and Vietnam? On one hand, it is very important to mention that for Americans, it's crucial to stay on the contract since it provides them security and avoids uncertainty. Throughout the contract, all contingencies are covered and Americans feel safe. On the other hand, for Vietnamese, it is important to base their contract on trust. They trust the Americans to change the contract because they do have a good relationship. The relationship is from major importance for them. Therefore, we decided upon using this cultural dimension of Trompenaars due to the fact that we believe that the reconciliation upon this dimension will lead to a solution for this particular case. Solution. In order to solve the case and the problem between Vietnam and America, it is especially important to make both sides aware of the cultural differences. So at first, it is important to mention that America understands that Vietnam sees the contract just as a kindness, but America sees the contract as a fixed one. Both parties should get into a negotiation process and listen to each other to get a better understanding of cultural differences. Afterwards, the contract will remain because it's very important for the Americans, but they will adjust it and it will become more flexible in order to fulfill the needs of the Vietnamese. They will include a clause which says that high market fluctuation will lead to a new adaptation of the contract. This outcome will be positive for both sides since the market could go up or low.
We will move on to the second part of this presentation, which will end with a general business advice for both countries so that they could use it if they were to start over again. This will be done by taking into consideration different important business aspects of both countries. We will provide interesting information regarding interpersonal contact and conversation of the two countries. American greetings during business meetings is informal due to the general feeling of equality between people. Despite the fact that almost all Americans used to shake hands when greeting someone, in business meetings there can be exceptions where people will only say hello without having a body contact. The American type of business meetings is an aggressive one. Most of the American business meetings have the aim of getting things done. Therefore, business meetings are time pressured and based on clear actions. Presentations during meetings have an important role in American business since they present the core concept of the meeting in a clear and structured way. Often presenting during meetings is considered to be an opportunity to impress the manager of other important participants. In Vietnam, people shake with both hands and bow slightly to show respect when greeting and when saying goodbye. Women tend to bow their heads slightly rather than shake hands. The Vietnamese are very pleased if an European knows the proper way of Vietnamese greetings, Xin Zao plus name plus title. When visiting a Vietnamese home or office, foreigners should bring a gift for the host. In business settings, they usually give whiskey, but attention should be paid because sometimes gifts might be interpreted as bribery. Vietnamese businessmen sit in accordance to the rank order, with the seniority getting the center seat at the end of the table. Foreigners must write their name card in both English and Vietnamese and offer it with two hands in order to be considerate of the business partner. It is important to spend a considerable amount of time while reading the business card, also for respect purposes. To sum up, we can conclude that the American and Vietnamese way of holding business meetings is very different. While Americans strive for equality in all areas of life, Vietnamese are very hierarchical and sit on the business table depending on their professional rank. Moreover, American type of business meetings can be defined as an aggressive one, especially for the cultures where harmony and diplomacy during the meetings is highly pressured, as Vietnam. An interesting aspect is that while Americans use a very informal Vietnamese businessmen would rather shake both hands in order to show respect to their business partners. The negotiation process of the two countries is also worth presenting. American businessmen are considered to be pragmatic and interested in securing concrete results out of a negotiation. Before a negotiation, an American makes a precise and straight-to-the-point presentation. There is a clear tendency to dictate terms and to adopt a take-it-or-leave-it attitude and to defend the national interest. American businessmen are highly professional, pushy, skeptical, informal but urgent, cordial but blunt, forceful, explicit, and result-oriented. On the other hand, when talking about Vietnamese businessmen, they prefer to hold meetings in their own territories, which can be their offices or familiar locations. They tend to arrange meetings in an intimate area where visitors are treated as welcome guests. Such arrangements make them more confident and help them work more efficiently. Personal networks are very important in Vietnam since Vietnamese people prefer to work with those recommended by their friends. Vietnamese business culture focuses on the social connection made between business partners. Through disclosing personal information, Vietnamese businessmen will improve their relationships. Prior to a negotiation with Vietnam, foreigners have to pay attention to the hierarchy in Vietnam and make sure how to show respect towards elderly people who are considered the carriers of knowledge, tradition, and wisdom. They also have the strongest influence in decision making and are respected and sought after for advice. The only point that Vietnam and America have in common is about punctuality. meaning that both parties like it if the business partner is on time. Except for this, the rest is definitely different. For instance, in America, the greeting is done with a lot of physical contact, sometimes even with hugging. In Vietnam, it is a bit more complicated. They are usually shaking their hands, but only with the same sex. If a man and a woman want to greet each other, the man has to wait until the woman extends her hand first. If she is not doing so, both parties just bow with their heads slightly. In America, it is normal to hand items just with one hand. In Vietnam, that is done with two hands. Furthermore, business cards in Vietnam are very important, therefore, they are presented with both hands, and it is perceived as rude if the receiver does not look at it closely. Dresses in Vietnam are controversial, therefore, men as well as women should wear suits. In America, the atmosphere is a bit more relaxed. For example, they are often using short terms and like to make jokes in a business setting. An interesting aspect of the two countries is the importance they pay to seniority. While in America there is a concept which promotes the equality between all human beings and no distinction is made based on status or age, in Vietnam things are quite different. Vietnamese social structure is primarily based on age and status. The social classification of Vietnam comes from Confucianism, which promotes social stratification. Therefore, in Vietnam, every person has a specific place within the society. The distinction between different places within the society can be seen in Vietnam with every action they do, starting from how they behave with their families and ending with more formal aspects as business meetings. For example, within the Vietnamese families, the oldest is served first during the meals, and that person has the final decision on different aspects such as the marriage of one of the relatives. Seniority has a big role also in formal environments such as business meetings or government issues. For example, if there are brochures or business cards during a presentation, the order in which the participants will receive them will be based on their age and status. If this tradition is not respected, the company could have a lot to suffer from since the other will see this kind of behavior as a disrespectful one. Our conclusion is based on two pieces of advice for both countries. The first advice to be given in order to improve the business relationships between America and Vietnam is a cross-cultural expert. Both cultures should consider hiring a cross-cultural expert, meaning a person who has a great knowledge about both countries and has worked in both America and Vietnam. This person can share his experience to both cultures and try to explain the most striking aspects about each nationality and which of these might consider a cultural shock to each other. Having done that, both American and Vietnamese business delegations will have a clear account on the way their business partners are most likely to behave, dress, socialize, and finally do business. It is believed that the main aspect that led to the unfavorable situation of Vietnam to have lost a great amount of money due to the fluctuations of price for corn is that none of the countries, especially Vietnam, did not undertake a crucial first step before signing the contract. Both countries should have conducted a research on the food market in order to see how the prices on foods fluctuated in the recent past. In case the research would have showed so, Vietnam could have asked for an additional clause in the contract. This clause would allow the contract to be changed if one of the parties would be in an unfavorable situation. Therefore, the situation presented in the case would have not happened. Moreover, it might be considered that making a 10 years contract as too risky, since so much money is involved. The two countries should have made the contract only for 2 years and continue prolonging it in case everything goes according to the plan and there is a win-win situation for both America and Vietnam. We would like to thank you for your attention.